Unit 3 politics. We're talking about interest groups today. Let's start with the research. Oh, you're just some crank social studies teacher. You don't know anything. Well, let's go to the experts. U.S. is an oligarchy, not a democracy. Testing theories of American politics, elites, interest groups, and average citizens. Look it up. There it is. Cambridge University study found that through multivariate analysis, economic elites and organized groups, such as interest groups, have substantial impact on government policy, while average citizens and smaller interest groups have little to no influence. How about that democracy that we have? The people rule, do we? Some people rule, as you've seen in our democracy lesson, and some people do not rule. And what did they specifically point out? If you want a policy changed and the elites don't support it, it don't get changed 18% of the time. If you want a public policy that is highly supported by the elites, people with money and connections, and interest groups, it's adopted 45% of the time. We the interest group. So what is an interest group? It's a political party subgroup, technically, or a group formed around a specific interest that uses its power, that uses its influence, uses money to influence politicians to create favorable legislation around that interest. The NRA pulls its resources to influence politicians to pass legislation that supports gun rights. National Right to Life does the same thing to pass legislation around a single interest, which is anti-abortion. On the other side, you got Planned Parenthood playing the same game, getting the money, getting the support, getting the protests, everything they can do to influence legislation for the right to choose, and the Sierra Club fighting for nature, doing the right thing, and loading the green into the pockets of, more than likely, the Democratic Party, so that there is EPA policy, legislation that protects the environment. Democracy, isn't it great? Now, in defense of this democracy, while you're standing to the side hoping that you get yours, or that the politicians follow you in your decisions and represent you with their policy, the interest groups have the same right because they are made up of people. And those people, just because they decided to organize and be more influential, can't really shame them. That's democracy. That's what you got to deal with. Hey, your vote was great, but there are many, many, many votes that are more important, and there are many, 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 many stacks of cash are more important. So maybe democracy, maybe you don't matter as much. I don't know. Let's keep exploring. So here's how it works. Interest groups. Again, kind of like a political party subgroup, but for the most part, it's just an organized group of people that support a specific issue. They organize together to make sure that that issue is supported by the government's public policy. Now, you can vote if you want to protect your right to a firearm, and you elect politicians that then vote to protect your firearm, and that's all good and well, and that is democracy. That is the people ruling. Or you could start an interest group, find some like-minded friends who support that similar policy, pull your resources, pull your activities, work as a team, power in numbers, really just get a bunch of cash, and thus send that cash to your favorite political party, and thus that political party gets a candidate elected, and once in office representing you in Washington, D.C., they pass favorable legislation that supports your policy. Which scenario is more likely to result in your firearm being protected and your Second Amendment rights being protected? You can go route one and just vote for the guys that you like and hope that everything works out, or you can increase your odds of getting what you want by creating interest groups. So, when it comes to those politicians once they're in office and they're making laws, how does this work? Well, you can give them a call and say, hey man, I need you to protect my right to own weapons, or I don't think this weapon should be banned. You give them a call, and you know what? Is it likely that they're going to change legislation, spend hours and hours and weeks and days and debating and creating legislation for one single person? It could happen, but it's not easy passing a law. And to do this for one person, to do this for every single person that gives them a little ring on the phone, maybe not likely, but it's possible. It is a democracy. We the people are running this thing. But however, the old NRA gives them a call, speed dial time. We got more people represented here. It's more likely that if I am a candidate and I'm going to respond to my people that I represent, I'm going to represent first the many over the one. If I'm writing up a law, I'm probably going to listen to the NRA and its thousands and thousands of members. The politician might listen to them both, but we definitely know who's skipping to the front of the line. You may get your legislation in the end, but you're going to have to wait your turn. Is that democracy? I don't know. It's just the way that it is. Again, perfect is the enemy of good. It's not a perfect system. We've got to accept some flaws in this system. There are many, many worse systems of government. And again, those people, the NRA, it's made up of people. It's not just some abstract machine. It's people. The candidate is responding to the people. Let's talk about writing laws. So, that politician that you elected, you're imagining in your head that you elected them. They don't just vote for you on issues, but they create legislation. They write laws, right? Well, in many cases, the interest group is actually writing the law. So, if you ask the politician to write a law for you, maybe they do it. What if you already got the law written? You take out all the hard work. You do all the necessary things because you're an interest group with many, many people, many stacks of cash, many resources, and you relieve the burden of the politician. He has to do very little other than just kind of walk the piece of paper out and vote. Who's more likely going to get the legislation passed? You, who's just asking, or the interest group who's doing the writing, who's doing the hard work, the heavy lifting? And in some cases, this interest group is working with other politicians to negotiate, to get them to also pass the law. What are you going to call every single Republican politician in the House of Representatives? Well, they can because they have thousands and thousands of members. Yes, democracy. We vote, they vote for us. That's the dream. That's what's going on. Hey, it's not perfect, but sometimes it's more of the interest groups vote and they vote for the interest groups. Again, in defense of the interest groups, they're not just some organization, it's an organization of Americans. And those Americans have the right to a voice. They have a right to guide public policy. So it's people. You're a person, there's just more of them. And hey, if more people want something in a democracy where we have your favorite majority rule, many rule, mob rule, the many win, the mob wins. The one, the few, too bad, so sad. Well, I don't like this system. It's the best that we got. Perfect is the enemy of good. We don't need to tear down democracy as much as we just need to work on it, make it a little better. Maybe there's a way that we can massage this interest group system, manipulate it, make some tweaks, tinker with this system a little bit to make it a little bit more favorable to the individual citizen. But the only way we get there is if we start questioning it. So when we question it by banging on democracy, but we don't want to bang too hard because we don't want to destroy it and break it and end up with a government that's much worse. Now, not in defense of interest groups, when we talk about possibly giant hedge funds, bankers, investors, they also have large interest groups that spend, well, they're not really large in size of its members, but it's large in size of the cash. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily the grassroots interest groups working the door to door, knocking on doors, getting people elected, doing rallies and protests. At the end of the day, how much cash you got? Political campaigns are expensive. You got to get them elected to get them into office. And money talks. And the hedge funds, the investor banks on Wall Street and the stock market have lots of it. Thus, as we started the lesson, they have a lot of influence. What was it, 45% of the time when the high-profile elites support an issue, that policy goes through because they got the money to pay the bills, to get their guy into office. And once their guy's into office, they knock, 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 come to the door. Interest groups at the door, what do they need? You know what they need. All right, what do you want me to pass today? That's the way that it works. And in this case, those hedge funds, stock market, Wall Street types, it's not necessarily the people, it's the few elites that are represented by the interest group. The few elites want their interests protected by legislation. Not the many, not the average working Joe, not the working class, not the minorities, the wealthy. Using their power to get more power, using their money to secure more money. The corporations. Yes, there are interest groups that represent the people, and you can join an interest group and be a part of an organization that is politically active and civically participates and attempts to influence legislation. But so too can the elites, and so too can corporations. Because corporations like McDonald's and Google, as ruled by the Supreme Court, are made up of people. A corporation is made up of investors. There are many, many people that own stock in McDonald's. Those are people that have something at stake for McDonald's. So when we say McDonald's, we think of a restaurant. But McDonald's represents many, many investors, which are many, many people. And last time I checked, in this democracy, we have freedom of speech. And one of the ways, as ruled by the Supreme Court in the Citizens United case, thanks Hillary Clinton for this one, the Citizens United case ruled by the Supreme Court that corporations have freedom of speech because corporations are made up of people. People have freedom of speech, and giving money to politicians is a way to express your speech. Seems like a stretch to some. That's not speech, it's just giving money. Are you expressing a concern over an issue? It might be a stretch, but the Supreme Court ruled that by donating to political campaigns, you are exercising your freedom to express what you believe. You're not saying anything, you're just giving money. Well, you kind of are saying something. If I give cash to you, politician, to support gun rights, yes, I'm literally giving you cash. Here's your cash. I want the law support the Second Amendment. Or really, here in Citadel, the corporations would be saying, here, tax us less. I'm giving you cash. All right, you are literally just giving cash. But what I am actually saying, figuratively, by giving you this cash, I am saying tax me less. And I have the right to say that as a person. And I, as a person, am an investor at Citadel. And thus, Citadel represents me. So if Citadel gives the cash and says low taxes, then I'm saying low taxes. And it's protected. And that's your system. And that's our democracy. So again, there are flaws in it. It's not the best system. But when we start asking questions about it, maybe we can make it better. Maybe we can tinker with the system without completely breaking it. At the very least, it is a topic worth exploring if we want our democracy to represent the American people, if we want true self-government, if we want to rule and not be ruled. Got to think about these things. Here's another example on a more local level. The National Education Association, a teacher-formed interest group. They work together to lobby or to persuade. So when we talk about interest groups, we use the word lobby and lobbyist. To lobby is to persuade a politician to pass legislation by asking or by giving them money. So the NEA uses lobbyists. These are professional persuaders in Washington, D.C. to lobby the candidate. In many cases, the lobbyist is actually writing the law for the candidate. Grease the wheels, reduce friction, make it easier to pass legislation. So we got lobbyists. The NEA is representing thousands and thousands of teachers across the country collecting dues. They take that money, they hire lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Those lobbyists write legislation, get that legislation passed. What kind of laws might you want? Well, let's look at teaching in general. To become a teacher, you have to pass a test. And once you pass these praxis tests, you become a certified teacher. So the teachers may come together and say, we've got an idea. Let's pass a law that makes the tests more difficult. Now, why would they want to do that? They call up the lobbyists, tell the lobbyists, get to writing, get to working, get to spending, get the politician to make this happen. Make the praxis test harder. Make the certification to become a teacher more difficult. And we're saying that because if it's more difficult to become a teacher, then we're only going to get good teachers, right? Isn't that perfect? Make the test harder so we don't get any bad teachers. And if we have good teachers, we'll have good students, and we'll save America. Okay, great story. Get that law through now. What was really happening, though? Why did the NEA, in this theoretical, or is it theoretical, experiment, and this can happen to many different types of sectors of employment across the country. It doesn't have to be just teachers. Any type of sector of employment where certification is required. Electricians, cosmetologists, anywhere where you got to get certified and take tests to become that thing. If they make the tests harder to become that thing, to get that job, you are going to reduce the supply of cosmetologists. You're going to reduce the supply of electricians. And in this case, we reduce the supply of teachers because not everybody can pass the test. And when we have a low supply, what happens to prices, folks? Prices go up or wages go up. So why did the NEA decide to lobby to pass a law that make the test harder? Why are we making it harder for teachers? We're not making it harder for teachers. We're making it harder for future teachers. The teachers that have already passed the easy test, the teachers that have been certified for years and years and years, they want to protect what they got, just like an electrician would behave the same. If you've already been certified, make the test harder. Protect what you've got. Cosmetology already passed the test. Right now, make it harder. I don't want any more people coming into the market and competing with me. I want to be the only beautician in town. I want to be the only electrician in town. The supply will be low, and people will have to pay a higher price for my services. Oh boy, what a beautiful democracy. We use our vote, we use our influence, we use interest groups to take care of ourselves. I want it now, daddy. Oh boy, could we make it better? Not to bang on democracy too much, but when we ask these questions, when we bring up these topics, we can then start to move forward. Again, perfect is enemy of good may not be the best situation. We always have to consider trade-offs, but we need to consider, we need to discuss, we need to debate. We have to think about future, better plans. And you can go to opensecrets.org and see specifically how interest groups give their money, who they give their money to. Here we can kind of look at conservative groups, not to pick on conservative groups. Oh, I'm a conservative, don't pick on them. Why don't you show me what the libs are doing? How much money are the libs using to influence? No, the reason why I'm showing you conservative groups, if you're conservative, is that it should probably irritate you. Because it's not just liberal interest groups that are going against what you want in terms of public policy. It's easy to see it that way. There's liberal influence. There are interest groups that give to Democrats. Oh, well, they want different policies than I do. Yeah, but even the conservative groups that are supposedly on your side, donating to the Republican Party for public policy, who's getting what they want? You, the single voter, or is it the interest group that's supposedly on your side? Who has more influence? As we stated at the beginning, it's probably them. Thanks for joining me. See you guys soon.